We will be talking about the NHL's opening week. On Left Bench Sports.
Kayvon did Alex. No, the Dolphins are not frauds.
All right, we gotta restart
again.
Bad this defense has been. I do not trust them against the Dolphins at all.
Milwaukee Bucks joining the finals this year.
Got a whopping 52 fantasy points in Miami's route of Broncos country.
My 80-year-old grandmother could have broken more tackles and probably made more plays than Mahomes if they gave her a helmet and some football pads.
Welcome back to Left Bench Sports. We will be talking about 3 games around the NHL, the Buccaneers and Lions game, college basketball, NFL coaches, and some upcoming NFL games.
The first game we will be recapping is the Bruins win against the Avalanche on Thursday. The final score was 5-2, and Smitty, this obviously was a huge win against an elite team like Colorado. Does this make you feel more confident about the Bruins being the best team in the NHL?
Yeah, Colorado's been doing really well, especially Nathan MacKinnon. But this was a great win for the Bruins. They lost to them on the road in overtime. I'm pretty sure either overtime or a shootout. I forget what it was. But getting this win 5-2 at home, it was a big win for the Bruins.
Yeah, definitely a statement game.
Yeah.
The Avs actually outshot the Bruins, but Swayman stood on his head for 30 saves.
Swayman's just a beast. He's been like this all season.
Yeah.
Like so far, like he's shown that he's a top goalie in the NHL. And I'm very excited to see what he brings in the future.
Yeah. Pastrnak had a hat trick as he keeps himself in the top 3 goal scorers in the NHL.
Yeah, Pastrnak is he's just too good.
Yeah, he's nasty.
His shot is probably one of the best shots in the NHL. The way he just releases it, the way the way he sees the ice and he has the vision to score goals is just unbelievable.
Yep.
Other 2 goals were from Jacob Lauko and Jake DeBrusk, and Charlie Coyle had 2 assists. So a great night all around from from Boston.
Yep.
Especially David Pastrnak, but Lauko, he's shown himself this year. He's getting up there. He's being he's a grinder. He's a very good third line, fourth line player.
Definitely. The 2 Av goals came from Nathan MacKinnon, who leads the NHL in points right now, and also Myles Wood. Like
we said, McKinnon's he's just too good. He's so good.
Yeah.
There's nothing he can't be stopped. He's just on another level.
Yeah. This loss and many of the other Avs losses were mostly at the fault of their goaltender, former Ranger Alexander Georgiev. I mean, he's just been absolutely awful.
Yeah.
One of the worst in the NHL this entire season.
Last year in the playoffs, he was pretty good.
Yeah, he didn't do bad last year.
So far this season, I haven't really watched him, but from what you're saying,
he just looks really bad.
He hasn't been looking good.
No.
So, moving on to the next game on Saturday, we had the Bruins, who absolutely destroyed the Montreal Canadiens 9-4. 16 different players on the Bruins had points this game.
Yep.
The Habs actually kept the game very close until the third period. And then the Bruins just kept going and going. They scored 4 on them. And then the Bruins just played exactly how they should. They played really well on defense, very solid. Montreal, they're not a bad team. They have depth.
I mean, honestly, I think as a team they're really bad. What's surprising is that their goaltending has been what's been, allowing them to win some games.
Yeah.
But in this game, we didn't see any of that.
They have depth like Cole Caulfield. They have
bright future, definitely.
Yes, they have a good future. Goaltending is all right, but it is what it is. The Bruins' goals came from Danton Heinen with a hat trick, Jake DeBrusk, Charlie Coyle, Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, Pavel Zacha, and finally one from Brandon Carlo, which he was the only defenseman with a goal in this game.
Yep.
And then 8 of which were scored on Sam Montembeault and 1 on Caden Primo. This is surprising because Montreal's goaltending has been on a bright spot for them. They've been doing pretty well. But, after just before this game, and then like as this game is going on, both of them got scored on, and like they're not that bad, but they played a really good team.
Yeah, Montreal had 4 separate goal scorers in the loss, but their best player was Sean Monahan, who had a 3-point game, all of which were assists.
Yeah.
Good pickup from Calgary for Montreal.
Linus Ullmark was in net for the Boston Bruins. He was not very good this game, but that's honestly not surprising. He hasn't been the best this year.
But he's been serviceable, and that's all you need from your number 2 goalie.
He still has a good save percentage. He's still like one of the top goalies in the league, just not as good as he was last year. It's not like his Vezina self last year.
And he doesn't need to be his Vezina self at all with how Swayman's playing.
Exactly.
They don't really need – all they need him is just go out there and get some wins.
He had his breakout year last year. He's getting old. Like, it's not like he's like young. It's not like he was drafted in 2012, so it's not like he's like young.
Yeah.
He gave up 4 goals on 21 shots, so not a good night for it was an okay night for Ullmark. But also Canadians were barely in the Bruins O zone or the D zone, so they weren't getting much shots. They weren't getting much ozone time, so it was a hard game for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah. Let's move into our last game where the Rangers beat the Ducks. The Rangers had 5 different goal scorers from Trocheck, Vesey, and the tying goal from Cooley, and the winning goal from Panarin, and a goal from Kreider as well. Kreider also had a 2-point game.
Yeah. This game actually weren't the Ducks up 2-0?
Yeah, they were up 2-0.
They were up 2-0 and
into the third period.
Yeah, they were up the whole entire game. Yeah. So it was a good comeback for the Rangers. It's good to see that the Rangers have they dropped off a little bit from where they were in December, but they're still a good team. They're a top 10 team in the NHL, which is great, and they have a great spot for their playoff stock.
Yeah. Shesterkin wasn't really great. The defense did pretty well, only allowing 8 shots, but he still gave up 2, which isn't, the goals were not anything crazy.
Yeah.
One was stuffed in, another one was the deflection, which deflections are not easy to save at all for goalies. Yeah. But
the Ducks' 2 goals were from Adam Henrique, so
yeah,
he's been killing it for the Ducks this year. He's gotten basically, I think, all their points.
Yeah.
It's
no surprise that he scored 2 against the Rangers, though, because he's been a Ranger killer since his time with the Devils.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the Rangers won 5-2 against the Ducks. So it was a good game for the Rangers. But bouncing off this game a little bit, we want to talk about the Rangers' loss to a team that will likely go down as one of the worst teams in history, the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, I mean, staying up to 1 in the morning to watch that on a school night and just seeing everything unfold after they had a 2-0 lead going into the third. Basically, what they did to the Ducks the game prior happened to them, but this time it was an awful team.
Yeah, that was just a bad game for the Rangers. Coming off of they played the Ducks and then they played the San Jose, right? Coming off a comeback and then losing to the worst team in the NHL, that's pretty bad.
Brutal.
But staying in New York, the Islanders have hired Hall of Fame goaltender Patrick Waugh as their new head coach. How do you think he's going to help the Islanders get into the playoffs this season?
He's a spirited guy. I definitely think someone who has all that NHL experience and played at an elite level. Mm-hmm. I think, when he was the coach for Colorado, he did not do very good, but he proved himself. He proved himself in the minor leagues coaching, and I definitely think that now he's more prepared to coach the Islanders.
He got his first win in his debut as the coach, which is really big.
Yep.
They won in overtime. But yeah, I think Patrick Waugh as their new coach it's going to help him a lot. He knows a lot about the game, and especially for the 2 goaltenders, the 2 top goaltenders that the Islanders have. I think that's going to be good for having a head coach or a goalie that's your head coach and he could help out mainly with the goaltenders on Elias Sorokin and what's the?
They also have Semyon Varlamov.
Yep, Varlamov. So I think it's going to be a good second half of the season for
Definitely
the New York Islanders.
Yeah, and their roster is not bad. They have a good roster. They just needed someone new up there.
Exactly.
Well, that'll do it for this week's NHL recap. Don't go anywhere. Jesse and Dean will be talking about the Bucks and Lions game.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Left Bench Sports. And this week, Ryan abandoned Dean, so now he'll join me on my segment. And he couldn't have chosen a better week to do it because yesterday the Lions put the Buccaneers out of their misery with the final score of 31-23. And I'm happy since they haven't won in a good long while, and I would like to see them succeed. So let's break it down quarter by quarter here, Dean. Let's start off with the first. What did you think about how they played? They started with the rock, and how do you think they went about the first quarter?
I mean, starting with the first quarter, I felt like both teams were just clashing with each other, and it was just short drives between both teams. Mm-hmm. I mean, offensively, it was just like every drive they got and gain was within like under 7 yards. It was nothing crazy. We didn't really get up to the higher yardage plays until like the third quarter later on in the games. I mean, both defenses played good, but I feel like the Lions capitalized on so many more of the mistakes the Bucs made. I mean, especially with Jamel Dean dropping that pass in the end zone from Jared Goff. I mean, that could have been such a big changing play for the Buccaneers in that area. I mean, the Mike Evans drop pass, 3rd and 17, would have been the first down completion. I speculate that he was worried about being hit over the middle and the knees, like other players such as T.J. Hawkinson's the Viking tight end, and Tyler Higbee, who also both of them sustained ACL injuries from one of the Lions backers, Kirby Joseph, who was responsible for both injuries of them. And he could be potentially fine at the end of this later on after the postseason. I feel like he was afraid to catch that ball because he was afraid he's going to be taken out and it would affect his future career. Otherwise, I mean, Jared Goff had it a lot easier considering that, the Lions' offensive line's 10 times better than the Buccaneers' O-line. Baker Mayfield, for offensively, he handled the pressure well, considering his O-line's not great and the Lions' D's much, better than they are. And, I mean, one field goal from each team. Chase McLaughlin's doink off the field goal post was pretty sad. And that's about it for the first quarter. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts on the way they played in the second?
Well, to start off, I think the Lions, they were going pretty strong on defense. They were really limiting the Bucs' chances there and really making big plays, keeping them to short yards and very few gains, and kind of just put them in their place. And then on offense for the Lions, I feel like excuse me, I feel like they really couldn't finish in a way that they should have. They had plenty of chances, and all they got out of the second quarter was just a single touchdown and a field goal. And they had really good potential drives there starting off in the second, and I think they really could have capitalized more on it, but they just couldn't. And, Montgomery, he had a pretty good game overall, had a few good carries. Goff gave the defense, I feel like, just a few too little points to work with there in the first quarter. If he could have expanded that, I think it would have helped them a lot more. But, it's what it is. They ended up coming out on top anyways, so I guess it didn't really matter. But now that being said, I felt like they really turned it up in the third quarter here. So, Dean, what do you think about that?
So starting in the third, we had first drives by both teams ended in punts to end the second. The Bucs got their second and third drive, their second drive in the third quarter and punted again. I mean, once the Lions got the ball back, this is when the Bucs began to break. The defense started to break down for the Bucs. I mean, the Lions would go on a 10-play scoring drive on top of this, capped by Craig Reynolds' 4th and goal touchdown. The Lions were just driving it down their throat towards this point of the game. It was just, it was obvious that the Lions had the upper hand at this point in the third quarter. Baker Mayfield did answer back, led by a 7-play, 75-yard scoring drive, capped off by a 12-yard receiving touchdown by Rachaad White. The Lions' defense did have constant pressure on Baker Mayfield throughout the entire quarter, and it was blatantly obvious that he was starting to struggle with all the pressure on him. He did manage to get a couple passes off to Cade Otton and other guys in the pocket and scrambling. I mean, considering how much pressure he was under in the passes he was making, I feel like he did prove a good point that he's worth a contract for the Buccaneers, and I think he'll get signed eventually for them in the upcoming season. I mean, the Lions would begin another drive to carry into the fourth quarter after that. I mean, that brings us to the fourth. And, Jesse, what were your thoughts on the fourth?
I think the whole game, and not just the fourth quarter, really all came down to that Mayfield interception that he threw. I think that would have that if that hadn't happened, the Buccaneers would have had a good chance of coming back, tying it, and then going into the into overtime. And they really kind of just came up really short there. And I guess I shouldn't really say they, more like Baker Mayfield, and he knew it too. You saw the way he walked off the field after.
Yeah.
He was very upset.
He knew it was his fault.
He knew it was his fault. And as you can imagine, that's not a good feeling.
Yeah, it was their way to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was their only way to get to the Super Bowl, and he threw it right into their hands. And, I think Detroit's defense really turned things up. Yeah, they knew that they never let off at all at any point during the game. I think they really were trying to stay on top of them, and they did a really good job with that. The Lions turned up the heat with the passing game in the fourth quarter a little bit. Mayfield did all he really could, and he got really no help from his line at all. So it kind of killed him there. And that was about it.
It looked like we were watching the Giants' offensive line.
I know, it was horrible. It was like looking at a block.
It was under 2.5 seconds before he was even, a guy was in his face, ready to smack him.
Yeah, he had no time whatsoever in the pocket to work with or do anything. So anyways.
Moving on to our wrap-up of the game, what were your thoughts? Baker, although losing the divisional round of the NFC playoffs, he proved to the league and the Bucs franchise that he is definitely a capable quarterback. Do you think he's going to be signed next year?
I think he should. I definitely think he should. He's really done great things with Tampa Bay this year. He won the division with them, and I think giving him a little bit more time might be what he needs.
All right, Buccaneers will have a tough all-season decisions to make. We got Mike Evans, Devin White, Levante David, Baker Mayfield, Antoine Winfield Jr. All these guys they're starting pieces, and they're going to be they're going to be free agents now. Do you think the Bucs are going to sign them back, or do you think they're going to move to other teams?
I think they'll get a good couple of them back. I can't say which ones, but I think they'll take a
Mike
few
Evans,
of them back.
probably.
Yeah, probably Mike Evans. Probably Mike Evans, Mayfield, and
maybe Levante.
Yeah, Levante are the ones I'm thinking. But the other two will probably migrate, I'd say.
Go to a different team, probably.
Go somewhere else. Those contracts are probably just a little bit too big to sign because they know what they're worth. But I think those two will move on.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. So Lions moving on to face a much more quality opponent in the NFC Championship game to the 49ers. Game will come down to who will win the battle of the trenches, the Lions O-line or the 49ers front seven. Should be an entertaining matchup and a physical one. Both teams play an older brand of physical football. What do you think?
This is a tough one. This is going to be a really tough one, but I'm going to have to go with the Lions. I think they're a tough team. Campbell gets them ready to go every game. In and out. He's ready to send them off to war. I think if they approach the game with the attitude that they've approached it with all year, I think they'll be just fine and they'll come out on top.
I think the Lions are definitely capable of, going pretty far. They've already proved to the point that, this may be a history year for them, considering this will be the first year they ever touched the Super Bowl field.
Yeah. It's really a big year for them, and I think they can do it. I think it's been a long time coming, and I think they'll do it.
They definitely have the potential to do it. It's just going to come down if, any guys get hurt or to see what happens with, the Ravens and the Chiefs game.
Yeah.
But, overall, that's all we got for today. All right, well, that's all the time we have for you guys today. Don't go anywhere. Jake will be in a few moments discussing college basketball.
Hello and welcome back to Left Bench Sports. College football season's officially over, and that now leaves us with college basketball. So it's just me, so I'm going to be covering a bunch of topics in college basketball. Let's get right into it. There's been a ton of movement in the rankings. Every week we see top 10 teams just fall. So let's just look at the top 25 teams in the country. You can see them right here. I'm just going to cover around the top 10. Number 1, we got UConn, then Purdue, UNC, Houston, Tennessee, Kentucky, Kansas, Auburn, Arizona, Illinois. Then we have teams like Oklahoma, Duke, and Wisconsin just added the top 10. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm just going to touch up on a bit of it. As always, the AP poll has some flaws. First off, the top 3 I would say cannot be debated. UConn has been dominant in Big East Conference play ever since the Seton Hall game in December. 17-2, no shock they're going to maintain their number 1 seed. Purdue as well, they have the most quad 1 wins in the country. So even with the upset loss a few weeks ago against Nebraska, you really can't deny how good they are. Of course, they also have Zach Edey. He's putting up crazy numbers, 23 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks on the defensive end. Let's take a look at his game versus Iowa. 30 points, 18 rebounds, and 4 blocks. But without a doubt, Purdue is top 2 team in the country. It just comes down to how good they play in March because, we usually know how that goes. They usually always choke. So, but as I was speaking about the Big East, there's a team to note. It's an extremely deep conference, and almost every game is competitive. I'm going to say this now. Do not sleep on Seton Hall. 2 notable teams that they beat has been UConn and Marquette. They just came off a 3-point loss in overtime with Creighton, and they show for a fact that they've been able to compete. They're standing at 13-6 and second in the Big East, and in my opinion, this team should be ranked. Definitely my sleeper team, and without a doubt, you should watch for them in March. But next, I want to talk about UNC at 3. Obvious move up since last week. Kansas takes an embarrassing loss to West Virginia. They've also been extremely dominant in conference play. Great guards like R.J. Davis, Elliot Cadeau, and Armando Bacot will always be a pretty decent big in college basketball. When we look at the way they're playing right now, you really think this is how they were supposed to be last year. You got guys like R.J. Davis going crazy. He had 36 against Wake Forest. So UNC, for sure, the most dominant team in the ACC so far. Houston at 4, I would say this is relatively where they are. A lot of people were thinking that they were frauds. They wouldn't fit in the Big 12, but they fit in just fine. Of course, in the past 2 weeks, they picked up 2 upset losses versus Iowa State and TCU, but don't knock these losses. There's some tough teams. They also just picked up dominant wins against Texas Tech and UCF, so I think they're pretty deserving of their number 4 ranking. And I think Tennessee gets their spot at 5. And then Kentucky, we have something to talk about. A lot of people feel as if they're a better team than Tennessee, particularly the Kentucky fans. And I'm not saying that they aren't. They're not going to be able to move up, though. After this week, just witnessed a huge 17-point upset win for South Carolina and Columbia. But I real quick want to cover this game. This is obviously a huge loss for Kentucky, but I think it's bigger for South Carolina, and that's what people don't talk about. They played lights out, amazing defense, holding all their talent on that Kentucky roster to 62 points. We saw a big game for guys like Delon Cooper and Michi Johnson, but overall it was just a great team win. They had barely any turnovers in the second half, and once again, Coach Paris had this team playing terrific defense. It's another team who I think will be ranked by next week, along with Seton Hall. I think they need to get a convincing win against Missouri, and then I think that sets them up for another big game, and that one's against Tennessee. Going back to Kentucky, though, I wouldn't knock this team down too much for this. It's very hard to win conference games on the road. Better yet, against a sellout crowd. You could see just the way the team stormed the court. It's a hard game to win, conference games, and the fact that South Carolina also got fined $100K just because all the fans that stormed the court. That shows you the environments of these games. So it's a tough team to beat, so great job to South Carolina, but definitely don't count out Kentucky. They have crazy talent still. Just to name a few of the guys that they have, Rob Dillingham, spark off the bench every game, puts up great numbers. Reed Shepard's one of the best freshmen in the country. DJ Wagner's a huge asset. Antonio Reeves is essentially one of the best players in the SEC. And they just got their 7'2" center, Ivisic. So he didn't have a great game against Carolina, but definitely expect him to be stepping up on his role. But as I said, don't count them out. They're one of the best teams in the country. They have crazy talent. It's just hard to win road games in conference play. Let's look around 7, 8, and 9 real quick. I'll keep Kansas at 9. This team is still, they're still amazing. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just not as confident in them as I usually am in Kansas teams like every year. Like I said before, every team is due to blow a few conference games. It's hard to win, but losses to UCF and especially West Virginia, that makes you scratch your head a little. But next up, I got Auburn at number 8. Same thing as the AP poll. Was looking forward to them proving people wrong, potentially moving up more. But as we know, they took a tough rivalry loss to Alabama 2 nights ago. And I wouldn't say that they're overrated because of this loss, but maybe a little better than their 16-3 record says. As we know, they haven't beat any really good teams yet. But this game is also just another one of those that are tough to win. On the road rivalry game, it's just not easy. You could even go to say that refs give the slight edge to Bama in this one, but either way they earned it, and Auburn falls. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Auburn play better teams in their conference because, I want to see how good they actually are. With Arizona at 9, I'm not sure if they deserve their number 9 spot. Once again, another great team, but they haven't looked insanely good. They don't look bad, to be honest. But last night we saw the loss to Oregon State. They also fell to Washington State recently, and of course they've beaten some teams over this course, but I don't want to say anything too bold, but in my opinion, Pac-12 isn't too strong of a conference in basketball. I think this team could keep losing if this is how they continue to play. Let's just look at the teams right by that number 10 spot: Illinois, Oklahoma, then Duke and Wisconsin. In my opinion, basically every team outside of like the top 5 or 6 is debatable right now. You see upsets constantly. I'm a Duke fan, so I don't want to seem biased or anything, but I feel like if this team could be a little better than Oklahoma, maybe even Illinois, and I understand that they had to move down after that bad loss against Pitt, but they're missing huge pieces. Mark Mitchell, Jeremy Roach, their star point guard, is an upperclassman guard. Either way, not an excusable loss against a team like Pitt. But what I will say is that beginning of the season, we saw them coming out a little shaky like this. 3 upset losses. But since then, they turned on the Jets. A key guy for them, who I want to mention, is Jared McCain. A little slow to start the season with those losses, but he's gained some confidence. He's gotten used to the college environment, and I think he's been great. Before the recent win against Louisville, he's been averaging over 16 points per game in 9 games, and a few boards to go with it. So I think, if he continues to build his confidence up a little and just continue to get used to the college environment, I think he could be a huge factor to why this team wins. And I think it could be a huge factor to why this team improves. Just to wrap this segment up, I want to state what my current top 15 teams are. Not much different at all from the current AP poll, but just some teams who I think are a little bit better right now than the other, Top 15, basically top 5 the same: UConn, Purdue, UNC, Houston, Tennessee. Then Kentucky, despite the loss against South Carolina, I really agree with what it looks like right now. As I mentioned before, they have crazy talent on their team. You can't doubt them. But I think they're better than Kansas, who I have at 7. Kansas at 7, I don't really think any teams are capable of moving up over them. But I also don't think Kansas is that crazy compared to, past years where we see Kansas teams in national championship contention. Of course, they could still get to this point, but I don't think they look as strong as past years. 8 still got Auburn, even with that loss to Bama. Listen, they're still atop of the SEC, and standing at 16-3, I think that they're a little better than the teams behind them with that record. At number 10, I'm going to move Arizona back and replace them with Duke. When I say they haven't been playing that well, here's what I'm seeing. They just barely beat a UCLA team who's garbage right now. They lost to Washington State over a week ago, and of course, last night, they lost to 10-9 Oregon State. They just really don't look as hot as they did near the beginning of the season. And with Duke at 9, you could say the same thing, that they don't look that great, but as I said against Pitt, they had key guys out, and I think they're going to keep getting better, After those 3 upset losses in the beginning, they turned it on a bit, and I think they're a bit better than Arizona with the way we've been seeing them playing. 11, I'll take Illinois. I think this team looks pretty good. They've beaten some good teams, and I think they can compete with just about any team in the country. We saw it against Purdue. Obviously, they'll have games against the ones they had against Northwestern, but upset losses are always a thing, and especially when they play like the 96 Bulls, Northwestern played crazy in that game, and as I said, conference games are not easy ones to win. 12, Oklahoma. 13, I like Marquette over Wisconsin. And then 14 and 15, I have Wisconsin and Baylor. So, as I said, not much that I think is different. Just a few teams that I think are a little better than the other at this moment. But that's all I got for you this week. Bit of a longer segment to get college basketball kicked off, but expect more coverage next week. Stay tuned. Luke and Myles will be talking about the conference championships games in the NFL.
Welcome back to Left Bench Sports. This week we'll be talking about the upcoming games on Championship Sunday. First game is Lions vs. 49ers, as both teams won close games last weekend. Luke, who you got?
I have to take the 49ers. They've just been the best team in the NFC all year. Purdy, he's not great. We saw that in their last game. But he'll get them by. He'll manage the game well. They got a ton of weapons on the offensive side. Debo, we don't know if he's going to play or not, but he's really, really good. McCaffrey's the best running back in the NFL. Kittle, who's one of the best playmaking tight ends in the NFL, when they let him get the ball, he could get through anyone. Ayuk has been really good, and the Lions' defense hasn't been that good. So adding all those things together, I don't think the Lions are just going to stop them at all.
Yeah, I think the question here is if Brock Purdy just doesn't screw up. He can't throw the way he did last weekend. They were lucky to win that game, let's be honest. But I have the Lions here. I think the Lions are just going to over-physical 49ers. They have the best motivator we might have ever seen in Dan Campbell. He's going to have his guys ready. Great offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. The 2 running back tandem of Montgomery and Gibbs, I think they're going to cause a lot of problems for the Lions, or for the 49ers, as Aaron Jones did last week. Jared Goff, I definitely trust him more than Purdy. I don't trust him, to do a 2-minute drill and have no timeouts. I don't trust him like that, but I think he'll manage the game much better than Purdy, and that's why I definitely have the Lions this week.
Yeah, I feel like Goff, though, has more turnovers than Purdy. I feel like that's Purdy. He's going to keep it safe and whatever. Goff, on the other hand, he turns the ball over a decent amount.
Yeah, but Goff, I trust Goff to make a lot more throws in a lot tighter spaces than Purdy.
I agree.
Yeah, I just think Lions are going to out-physical them. I think it's going to be a decently high-scoring game because the Lions
Niners definitely have a better defense than the Lions.
Yeah, that's the one problem.
And the Packers.
Yeah.
And Tampa and any team that any of them have seen. The Niners defense is good with the Nick Bosa and Chase Young.
Yeah.
So, in the next game, we'll be talking about is the AFC Championship game. You have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens, who both, the Chiefs had to play a tough game last week, and the Ravens didn't really. So who do you have?
I have the Chiefs. I think it's just going to be too much for the Ravens to overcome. Mahomes, Kelsey. The Chiefs got off to a slow start. They kind of just had to shake it off. But Pacheco, he's been on a roll. It's going to be an interesting game. There's a lot of bad blood between these teams. It's just going to be a tough game for the Chiefs. But I think as we saw last week in Buffalo, they have that championship DNA. They can come back from anything. It's what I felt when I watched the Patriots all those years. They were never out of games, and you always feel like they're going to win until they don't win. We haven't really seen much from Lamar. That's my main question mark. He hasn't really done much in the playoffs. I think the Ravens over the Lamar era are averaging 15 points a game in the playoffs. They have not done well. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the Chiefs are going to win.
Yeah, early in the season, you could see the Chiefs didn't have the go-to receiver. Do you think they have it known Rashee Rice? Is he that guy?
Definitely. I think he'll be taken borderline first round in fantasy next year. I think he's going to have great production. It's not really his talent that's really gotten him to where he is now. It's that he's learned, him and Mahomes are definitely on the same page. It's not up to the Kelsey level like him and Mahomes
obviously
are.
Kelsey's their top guy. But we saw in the beginning of the year they didn't have another guy to throw the ball to everyone. Marquez Valdez-Scantling was dropping passes. Kadarius Toney dropped a bunch of passes. Mecole Hardman fumbled the ball twice last week on 2 touches. Former Jet. And I don't know. They don't really have anyone else. Like Justin Watson was playing at the beginning of the year, but he's not that good.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, thank goodness for them. Kadarius Toney's out, so no more lining up off sides. But their receivers have still hurt them, as you said last week. Mecole Hardman, former Jet, 2 fumbles last week. But who do you have in this one?
I have to take the Ravens. They've been the best team in the NFL all year. They've looked unstoppable. Quarterback Lamar Jackson is finally healthy. Finally has this chance to go to the Super Bowl. And he could just keep running against anyone. He's become a much better passer than he has in past years. He's found other guys to go to that aren't Mark Andrews with him being injured. Now Andrews might be back. They put his top weapon back on their offense. The only tight end that we've been seeing in the last couple of years that could compete with Travis Kelce on that level. Zay Flowers has become like almost unstoppable. When he gets the ball, he's as fast as anyone. Can make moves, get by anyone. And Isaiah Likely, in the absence of Andrews, has become really good as a tight end. So I think they got a ton of weapons, and they also have the best defense in the NFL. And that's where they have to stop Kansas City, slow them down, keep their offense on the field, and I think they could beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like, when you're playing Mahomes, you want to keep your offense on the field, and that's why I can see the Ravens winning, obviously. They have a great running game. They're going to keep Mahomes off the field for 6-7 minutes at a time, and then they're just going to play great defense. But both these teams really have great defenses when you think about it. Chiefs' defense has been super underrated this year. Chris Jones might be one of the best D tackles in the league. L'Jarius Sneed, he hadn't given up a touchdown all year. Since last week, he gave up his first touchdown, so that was huge for them. But I think it's definitely going to be a close game. Obviously, the coaching matchup is elite this week. Coach Reed, he's going to have his guys ready. They're going to have great red zone execution like they always have. Chiefs do. And then Harbaugh, I mean, it's been a fantastic year for the Harbaughs. Obviously, national champions. And now they might go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So it should be 2 great games we'll see this week. And that's all we have for this week on Left Bench Sports. And we'll see you back next week as we'll be waiting for the Super Bowl.